What is up, my friends? Welcome into Flippin' Bats. The trade deadline has come and the trade deadline has gone, and chaos ensued. What a wild trade deadline this year. The market was wild and weird, and I'm going to talk all about it today. Top three winners from the trade deadline, top three losers from the trade deadline, and my favorite trade, most impactful trade that I thought happened this year. But man, I can't remember a trade deadline being quite like this. I mean, it was to the point where, you didn't have a ton of arms available, but then it clearly became a seller's market, and then teams weren't doing anything and then did, and then, some bats went flying at the end that I didn't expect. So I'm going to talk about all the big things that happened, everything you need to know. I'll talk about right here today, and specifically, like I said, the top three winners and top three losers. And this is going to get heated. If you follow me on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it nowadays, the night before the deadline, Monday night was quite the night with a lot going down. Was pretty vocal there, so this is probably going to get heated at some point, but I'm excited about everything that happened. I love trade deadline season. I think it really, it's so much fun to watch. I think it's a very unique thing in the game of baseball because there's not a ton of other sports that, I mean, literally, if you're not great, you're trading away your best players and getting prospects to build for the future. Speaking of prospects, Jackson Holliday on Tuesday got the call back up to the big leagues. Number one prospect in baseball, got the huge anticipated call up earlier in the year, and it did not go well. Really failed, but obviously very, very, very young player, top prospect in baseball, but didn't go well and got sent back down and dealt with an injury, and then was trying to work his way back and wasn't playing quite as well, and then started playing better, and now he's getting the call back up. So this could potentially be the biggest pickup of all of them. The Orioles getting Jackson Holliday back to the big leagues, number one prospect in baseball, who pretty much everyone across the board, myself included, thinks he's going to be a superstar player in the league. But again, really young. Is that going to be this year? Is it going to be next? Is it going to take a little bit more development? We'll see. But I love what he brings, and I love watching him play. So excited for the Orioles to get him back. Let's talk winners and losers. Man, this was tough because I'm going to do top three for each. And I feel like I could have put everybody in the league into one category or another, and doing it top three winners and losers was tricky. I almost wish it was top five, but producer Taylor said I can't do top five because that's most of the league when all is said and done, almost half the league. So we're going to do three. We're going to start with top three winners. For me, I am going the Cleveland Guardians at number three. The big one for me is Lane Thomas. They also added Alex Cobb as a pitcher who hasn't yet thrown this year, but could potentially be starting as soon as, this weekend. But certainly in the next week or so, next couple of weeks, he will be back for sure, pitching. And since really post-COVID, he's been a good pitcher in the league, about a 3.7 ERA. His advanced analytics are even better. So when healthy and when right, Alex Cobb is a good addition to that rotation that we talked about it a good bit lately. Who would have foreseen the Guardians being as good as they are at this point in the year? And if they were this good, you would have said, wow, their pitching and Shane Bieber have been phenomenal. Well, they haven't had Shane Bieber. Their pitching has been pretty good. Their offense has been really good. They needed a starting pitcher and went and got Alex Cobb, which is a good get for them, I think. But Lane Thomas is the big one. This guy, because he hasn't been playing on a very good team in his big league tenure, might not be the biggest name out there, but Lane Thomas is a huge, huge get for the Cleveland Guardians. This guy is on pace for almost a 50 extra base hit, 50 stolen base season. We're talking a guy that could be a star for the Guardians. Is a really good player. Love plugging him in at the top of that lineup. I think the Guardians did a really good job. Didn't give up a ton to get this done. So obviously a team that's sitting atop the AL Central. I really like them and what they've been able to do this year. And I really like that they went and got some pieces. I love that they went and got Alex Cobb. Love Lane Thomas is a huge get. So for me, Guardians come in at number three. Moving on to number two, a winner at the trade deadline, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Dodgers made some great moves, in my opinion. And the biggest one, maybe I think the biggest one coming right at the buzzer, adding Jack Flaherty right at the end, right down to the last minute, a huge pitcher available on the market, traded hit and got him from the Tigers. But that trade earlier with the Cardinals, White Sox, and Dodgers, I thought they did well there. I think the Cardinals did the best of that three-way trade, but the Dodgers did well getting Tommy Edman and Michael Kopech there in that three-way deal. But also added Kevin Kiermaier here, Ahmed Rosario, another pickup. But for me, Jack Flaherty, a big one, a big get at the deadline. One of the best pitchers available, considering the year he's having. One of the best pitchers available, if not the best pitcher available at the deadline with how good he's been. Well, not available, but that turned out to be traded. Jack Flaherty was a huge get. The Dodgers needed some pitching help. Their rotation can be really good, but they've been dealing with a lot of injuries, a lot of question marks. Jack Flaherty answers a lot of those question marks. Really good get for them there. I think the Dodgers did really well. Didn't give up a ton to get this done either. In that trade with the Cardinals and the White Sox, a couple of mid to late 20s prospects to land Tommy Edman and Michael Kopech and Miguel Vargas. I really liked what the Dodgers ended up coming away with there, considering they didn't have to give up a ton to do it. And the trade for Jack Flaherty, we'll talk about this later, but I also didn't feel like they needed to pay that much to get this done. So with what felt like a seller's market for a while, they did really good there with getting Jack Flaherty down at the buzzer. So for me, Dodgers as a number 2 winner. I go Guardians at 3, Dodgers at 2, and my number 1 winner at the 2024 MLB trade deadline, the biggest winner of them all, the Miami Marlins. The Marlins killed it. Now, they weren't buyers. They were sellers, and it's hard to compare, right? It's hard to compare because we don't really know. When it's all just prospects and numbers that are on a piece of paper, it's tough to know. But the Marlins and Peter Bendix had themselves one hell of a deadline. This could be a generational deadline they just had. I mean, they made a trade late with the Padres for Tanner Scott, an all-star closer, to get the number 3, the number 4, the number 6, and number 29 prospects from the Padres. 3 of their top 10 prospects they got in return for a relief pitcher. And he's a rental. We're talking a guy that's not even under control going forward. We're talking about a guy for the rest of this season. You got 3 of an organization's top 10 prospects? That trade alone deserves for them to be in this top 3 winners conversation. But let's move on to continue to talk about the Marlins and how they got Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby from the Baltimore Orioles for a guy with a 4.92 ERA this year. Trevor Rogers, left-handed starters that are young and controllable are hard to come by for anybody. But to get Stowers and Norby, if you're the Marlins, that is a huge get. Connor Norby projects as a really good starting middle infielder in his career. I think Stowers could potentially be a starting outfield if I'm projecting a starting outfielder type player, but also definitely a big leaguer, outfield depth, 4th outfielder, 2nd or 3rd outfielder kind of guy. But Connor Norby is a huge get for them. That was huge. I just felt like you look up at the end of the deadline and you want to talk buyers here, right? You want to talk who won the deadline, what buyer put themselves in a great position. If you ask me who won the deadline, the name that keeps coming up to me 10 times out of 10 is the Miami Marlins. And I do get tired. I get tired of the same rinse repeat thing, and I'm sure people are going to comment and say it's the same thing over and over and over with the Marlins. The Rays do it. You make trades, players become good, you trade them away, rinse and repeat. But they weren't good this year. They didn't have a playoff team. What are they supposed to do? You could be the Colorado Rockies and do nothing and sit on your hands and just not do a single thing. At least they did something. And that doing something was getting top prospect after top prospect from team after team after team. The Miami Marlins killed this trade deadline, and in my opinion, hands down, won this. The Guardians did well. The Dodgers did well. The Marlins, hands down, won this. If I'm going a couple honorable mentions, I thought the Cardinals did well in their trade with the White Sox and Dodgers in that three-way trade. So Cardinals did well. I do think, I know they gave up a lot to get Rodgers, but I thought the Orioles by and large did well. A couple big relievers that, look, you look at their numbers, people don't love them. I like the addition of Sir Anthony Dominguez. I like the addition of Gregory Soto, which happened real late at the deadline. We're talking a lefty that throws 100 with wipeout stuff. We're talking a righty reliever that throws upper 90s with wipeout stuff that is has phenomenal numbers in the playoffs. So I really like what they did in their bullpen. I like what they did in the starting rotation, adding Zach Eflin. Trevor Rogers, not great numbers. Again, a 4.92 ERA on the year. I don't love that trade for them. They did give up a lot to do that. And it's not even a get that I think anybody's chomping at the bit to love. I saw Trevor Rogers the second I saw the trade went through to the Baltimore Orioles. I go to in my fantasy league to try and pick him up and say, oh, he's on a good team now. He's going to get some wins. Immediately turned around and decided not to do it because he does not have great numbers. But you're talking a lefty starter, young, can have good stuff. We'll see if they're able to figure him out and have him as a good starter. But Eflin, a good get for them as well. So thought they did well. Phillies and them, a couple good trades. So look, there are some honorable mentions, but I'm going Guardians, Dodgers, and Marlins at number one. Let's talk top three losers. This is where I know I'm going to get heated here because there's some teams that are near and dear to my heart in here, but I don't talk. I don't do these things with my heart. I speak my mind, and all bias aside, we're going to go top three, and we're going to start with the Detroit Tigers, an organization that is certainly very near and dear to my heart. I played 5 years in that organization. Know a lot of people there, want them to do well, will always want them to do well, have been around the organization since I was 10, 11 years old. I am very disappointed in the Detroit Tigers and what they did at this trade deadline. This is a seller's market. This was a seller's market for a while, and you had one of the best pitchers available in Jack Flaherty and didn't trade him away until the very end and did not get, in my opinion, enough for him. It was a very underwhelming return in a seller's market for Jack Flaherty. That's my thoughts here. I think at this point, Scott Harris and company for the Detroit Tigers have had 2 years to show that they're the regime that needs to turn things around. And between this ownership and Chris Ilitch, who you cannot convince me that Chris Ilitch loves the Detroit Tigers as much as Mike Ilitch. Between Chris Ilitch, between this front office that was Alavila, and now it's Scott Harris and company, it's not getting the job done. It's not. What are we waiting for with Jack Flaherty? This market was screaming to go get something done. The Houston Astros, from what I heard, reached out about Jack Flaherty, and apparently the price was too high, which makes no sense to me with what ended up happening to them. I don't love the prospects that they got in return for Jack Flaherty in a market that I think could have netted a lot more. Look at what the Padres had to give up 3 top 10 prospects. 3 top 10 prospects for a reliever rental. A reliever rental netted the Marlins 3 top 10 prospects. And the Tigers just didn't get a good enough return, in my opinion. Trey Sweeney could be good. I hope he's good. But I just think they played themselves out of the market. I thought the market screamed sell, sell, sell. And I think at the very end, it was, oh man, we held on to our cards for far too long. We missed out on the best opportunities. And now we're forced into a situation where we have to get something. That is why I think the Tigers are a loser. I think they played themselves out of the seller's market. I think they really messed up. And I think at the very end, it was Jack Flaherty. Okay, here, this is the best we can get right now. Oh, Mark Canha, what can we get here at the buzzer? I think they messed it up. I am disappointed in Scott Harris and company there with the Detroit Tigers and their handling of the deadline. They're at number 3 for biggest losers for me. At number two, a big loser at the trade deadline, the Houston Astros. Let me explain this a little bit. I do believe the Astros got better, right? The Astros added Yusei Kikuchi. Good lefty arm. Good, I mean, like, good, can have good stuff, good strikeout numbers. Don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the numbers on a piece of paper right now. Don't look at the numbers on the back of his baseball card. It'll show you a 4.75 ERA. You take a step deeper into the advanced analytics, and they do get a bit better. A 3.98 expected ERA, a 3.39 expected FIP, and a 3.46 if we really want to get deep. And if you really love advanced analytics, a 3.46 Sierra. But we're talking an arm that is really there to eat innings. They desperately needed an arm. They got it. I just think they gave up way too much for an arm that's not even pitching well. He has not been good. They gave up Jake Bloss, a good prospect, very young, potential to be a good starting pitcher in the league. Loperfido, who's been huge for the Astros this year, really good for them when it was desperately needed due to injuries and some other things. Loperfido came up and had some big offensive moments, really, really good defensively. That one's going to hurt. Will Wagner, son of Billy Wagner, putting up some really good numbers. You could have told me that they were just going to give up Jake Bloss for Kikuchi, and I probably would have said that's too much. In fact, I thought the trade originally was just Bloss for Kikuchi straight up, and I thought that was too much. So, my thoughts on this. I think the Astros are big losers here, and I don't love cussing on here. This deserves it, in my opinion. If you're a kid, you don't want to hear this, cover your ears. But Dana Brown, what the fuck are you doing? This is a nightmare of a trade. We can say, and you can say, that the market was crazy out there. But it wasn't before the trade. It wasn't at the end of the trade deadline with Jack Flaherty. The Zach Eflin trade, they didn't give up much for that. So I'll propose to you that you set this ridiculous seller's market. The Houston Astros made this a seller's market with that wildly ridiculous trade to the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays did great here. A great ad for them, for Kikuchi. And I do think Kikuchi is going to help the Houston Astros. He's an arm that they desperately needed. But this is way too much. And it wasn't a seller's market before. It was for a little while after, probably because you said it. And then at the very end, with the Dodgers getting Jack Flaherty, well, they didn't give up near as much to get him, and definitely a better pitcher. Disappointing, frustrating. Didn't get the first baseman you need. Didn't even address the first base situation. You're just going to run John Singleton out there for the rest of the year? Again, no discredit to John Singleton. I like John Singleton a lot. But there's plenty. You go into a trade deadline saying we need a starting pitcher and a first baseman desperately. You go and give some of your best prospects to the Blue Jays to get the pitcher, give up way too much to get the pitcher, and don't even add a first baseman. Don't even address that situation. And then on top of that, you probably have a lot of other teams pissed off at you for making this a ridiculous seller's market. I, man, I didn't even know what to say on Monday night when this happened. I was perplexed. I saw Jake Bloss come through for Kikuchi and thought, no, nah, I don't. That's a lot. Then I saw that these other names were coming out, and I thought, what is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. involved in this trade? What is happening? Nope. Turns out that's a big no. The Astros did get better. They failed miserably at this trade deadline, though. I tried to come around here. And I started to Tuesday morning. I woke up and I said, and here's the positives. I woke up and said, you know what? What is everyone complaining for? What are these prospects? The Astros have gone to 7 straight ALCSs. In case you haven't heard, the Astros are inevitable. They're in a win now mode. You have an owner in Jim Crane that is extremely committed to this team and says, as long as I am here and owning this team, the window will always be open. So you'll pay to go get players. What good are prospects? But then they don't address the first base situation. They really did give up way too much for Kikuchi, who's, by the way, a rental. What are we doing? You don't even have control of the guy. And you're giving up some big time prospects. So I was just firing. I was just firing off tweets the other night, Monday night. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe my eyes. Thought Vladdy Jr. might be involved. Thought I didn't know who was involved, but thought there was more. It didn't happen. And then Dana Brown goes in front of the media at the end of the game and says, yeah, this was important for us to do. We needed an arm. And with the market being such, in his words, the market is such that we had to give up players that we aren't happy giving up to get it done. Did the Astros get better? Yes. Did they give up entirely too much to get a pitcher that hasn't been good, that I think for the Astros best projects as for the rest of the regular season, a rotation depth arm that they desperately needed. And in the playoffs, if you can get there, a good lefty arm that can eat some innings in a relief role, a guy that can come in to get a lefty-lefty matchup. These are all valuable. It's valuable to have. But do you want that for Blas Loperfido and Will Wagner? No, way too steep of a price. I think if I'm being brutally honest with Dana Brown, I think he has a brilliant eye for talent. We saw that with the Atlanta Braves. I think he is a very, very good draft guy. I think he has a really good eye for talent. I think that is his niche and his specialty. I think he might be in a little over his head come trade deadline time as a general manager. But again, good eye for talent, has seemingly done well in a draft. We'll see in the end. But I did not think he had a good trade deadline. I thought this was a bad trade deadline for the Houston Astros, and that's why they are on my list of top losers at number 2. How are the Astros number 2, you ask? Well, let's talk about the biggest loser at the trade deadline, the Chicago White Sox. If you can't win more games on the field, if you can't stop losing on the field, how could you possibly lose any more than the Chicago White Sox are? Well, you can lose the trade deadline as well, turns out. They're fighting to be the worst team of all time. Stack another loss onto them. The Chicago White Sox failed this deadline miserably. You had some pieces that you could get some really, really good gets for. And Garrett Crochet, Luis Robert Jr., for a couple different reasons that didn't end up happening. Luis Robert Jr. probably played himself out of a big trade, in my opinion, a little bit. Strikeout numbers are astronomical. His numbers actually aren't good this year. Garrett Crochet, though, the words came out and rumors, and then apparently confirmed came out that Garrett Crochet said he didn't want to pitch in the playoffs for a team unless they agreed on an extension with him before. And obviously, that really slashes the market for you. But I also think there's a degree of the White Sox leaning on that a little bit as a crutch for not making this happen. Well, now what? Now what are you going to do with him? You ain't going to pitch in October with him. I think the White Sox could win every game from here for the rest of the season, and they're not going to make a playoff spot. Let's also talk about Eric Fetty, who is one of the best pitchers available at the trade deadline. You ended up trading him to the St. Louis Cardinals for nothing. You traded Eric Fetty and Tommy Pham in what became a seller's market, and you ended up netting Miguel Vargas from the Dodgers and a couple of mid to late 20s prospects for one of the best pitchers at the trade deadline. I'll say it again. The Miami Marlins got 3 top 10 prospects from the Padres in exchange for a rental reliever. The White Sox gave up their best pitcher this season, a guy that has 7 of their 27 wins as a team, and Tommy Pham for a bag of peanuts. I mean, Miguel Vargas, what good is he going to do the Chicago White Sox? What are we even thinking with that trade? And the 2 prospects aren't good enough. I have said so many times that I am done talking about this team, the Chicago White Sox, and they continually piss me off. Jerry Reinsdorf, shame on you for everything happening in this organization. Everything. This team is miserable. They are historically bad. Could potentially be the worst of all time. The front office that you put in place was literally just put in place so that you could manipulate them. They're not a good enough front office. They're all buddy-buddy. Everybody's buddy-buddy. And it shows. They have the 2 longest losing streaks in franchise history, and they have both happened this year at separate times. And the manager's still there. And then you royally screw up the trade deadline. Oh my God, what are we doing? Just a nightmare of a season, a nightmare of a front office, a nightmare ownership. Congratulations. You also got rid of Eloy Jimenez at the end to dump some contract, to make this team even cheaper, to make even more money. Congratulations, Jerry. Congrats. You're getting what you want. A shitty team and a low payroll. As a fan of the game, it just pisses me off. This one, more than anybody, right? You can live with what the Astros did. They knew they had a need in a rotation, and they went and gave up the farm to get them. But you can live with that. Your team's improving for this year, right? Your team's going for it for this year. But I can't be okay with this as a baseball fan. The manipulation of the front office, the mishandling of the players, the poor treatment of the team, the mishandling of the trade deadline, the buddy-buddy situation in the front office, the buddy-buddy situation down on the field with the managerial staff. It doesn't sit well with me, and it shouldn't with any baseball fans. I know it doesn't with Chicago White Sox fans, but they have their finger on the pulse every single day. If you don't know what's going on with the Chicago White Sox, I hope this gives you just a little bit of clarity. Because as a fan of baseball, this should just piss you off. And it pisses me off. The Chicago White Sox are the biggest loser of the 2024 MLB season, and they're the biggest losers of the 2024 MLB trade deadline. Tack another one onto there. Tack another one onto the loss column. Unbelievable. Top three losers: Detroit Tigers, Houston Astros, Chicago White Sox. Top three winners: Cleveland Guardians, Los Angeles Dodgers, Miami Marlins. My favorite trade. Let's talk some positivity. Let's talk my favorite trade of the deadline. I talked about this in depth on Tuesday's episode, on yesterday's episode. That was a little pre-trade deadline preview. But I talked about this trade because it already happened, and it is my favorite. Jazz Chisholm Jr. to the New York Yankees is my favorite and the best trade of the deadline for many reasons. One, the player that he brings to the field, the versatility he brings, on defense. Not to mention, look, I chose this as my favorite trade before his 2 homers on the night of the deadline on Tuesday night. But he did hit 2 homers Tuesday night, becoming the first Yankee ever with 4 homers in his first 3 games as a New York Yankee. He's been unbelievable for them. That's the player on the field. The player off and on the field and the personality that he brings, I said it the other day, the Yankees desperately needed. The Yankees have been boring. The Yankees were boring. I get they have the best 1-2 punch in baseball with Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, but the team and the organization have just been boring for years. And Jazz Chisholm Jr. is the opposite of that. He's fun. He's flashy. He's a good player. He flips his bat. He Euro steps at home. He does cool things running around the bases. He wears his hat backwards. He wears a shiny belt. The New York Yankees needed this. And if you can't see that, or if you don't like Jazz Chisholm Jr., it's because you don't like the way he plays the game. I love the way he plays the game. I love Jazz. I think this is the best trade at the trade deadline. He's played a couple games for the Yankees. He's played third base and center field. He's never played third base before. He made great plays the other night at third base. Started a couple double plays. Tuesday night, 2 for 5, 5 RBIs, monster homers. Homers for the lead late in games. The second homer was down 2 runs in the 7th inning, hit a 3-run homer for the lead. Man, this brings everything the Yankees needed. Speed, defensive versatility, good production, fun, swag, backwards hats, belts. Look, if I don't care, I'm sure people are out there saying, we don't do that with the Yankees. The Yankee way. Put your hat on straight. Screw you. Who are you telling to put your hat on straight? You know what? You watch the game with your hat on straight at home. And Jazz will do what he wants to do and wear his hat backwards and hit homers. And you know what you're going to do when Jazz Chisholm in the top of the 7th inning, down 2 runs in a hostile environment with 2 runners on base? You know what you're going to do when Jazz Chisholm Jr. hits a homer? You're going to cheer. And you're going to love him. Who cares if the guy wears his hat backwards? If you don't like it, you don't have to wear your hat backwards. But what he brings to the Yankees is exciting. It's fun. They didn't have to give up a lot to do it. They gave up their number 19 and 20 prospect, and he's been huge for them. Jazz Chisholm Jr. to the Yankees is my favorite trade of the deadline. Love that pickup for them. The reason they're not on my top winners while having my favorite trade is because they had a desperate need, I thought, for starting pitching help, depth, relief pitching, both, every bit of pitching. The New York Yankees needed help. We saw it again Tuesday. Jazz with that homer for the lead. Well, guess what? Here comes the Yankees bullpen to blow another lead, and they did just that. They needed bullpen help. They needed starting pitching help. They did not address those properly. So I could not put them in top winners. In fact, I could have put them closer to a loser. Again, did they get better? Yes. But with their aspirations as a team to win the World Series, they had needs and didn't get them done and didn't address them. I felt they really missed there with their pitching, and I think that's gonna cost them come playoff time. I do not think the Yankees have the pitching to win in October. We can bookmark this. We can come back to it. They can win a game. They can win a series. The New York Yankees do not have the pitching to get to the World Series come October. They just don't. But you know who they did add? Maybe this is my favorite ad of the trade deadline. I love friend of the pod, been on a couple times, love having him on. You know who the Yankees just signed? Brett Phillips as a pitcher. Dude was throwing in this NBC showcase league on TV. All of a sudden, comes out throwing 97 miles an hour. Video goes viral. Next day, the New York Yankees are signing him to a minor league contract. Brett Phillips to the New York Yankees as a pitcher. That is a signing. You know what? Put the Yankees in top 3 winners. They signed Brett Phillips as a pitcher. Just kidding, but I do love that move. I love Brett Phillips, what he brings to the game. So good on the Yankees for adding Jazz. Just a lot to talk about this episode. A lot was going on through my mind. I'm sure a lot will continue to go through my mind. Maybe I'll be able to speak a little bit of that on Saturday with Smoltz. Again, we'll talk to him, and as he does every single week, the Hall of Famer, John Smoltz, joins on Saturday, and I'm excited for this weekend because it's going to be all about this. His winner from the deadline, his loser from the deadline, his favorite trade, who he thinks put themselves in a position for the playoffs. I'm just excited to talk to him and pick his brain as a brilliant baseball mind, and I love talking to him every single Saturday. Hope you guys enjoy listening to that. This was a fun episode. There was a lot to discuss. So we did an episode yesterday, pre-deadline, had to do on post-deadline. Would love to know. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think the top 3 winners are the Guardians, Dodgers, Marlins? Let me know what you think about the losers, Tigers, Astros, White Sox. What your favorite trade was. Love hearing from you guys, whether it's on social media, on all those social media apps, or if it's on the YouTube, if you're watching this. But let me know. And I appreciate you guys for listening. This has been a really fun episode. Please make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever. Hit that subscribe, follow button. It does really help. Leave a review as well down there at the bottom. Scroll down. Say, Ben, we love the show. Do that. Let me know in the comments of YouTube. Follow on our YouTube channel, Flippin' Bats Pod, on all social media as well, Flippin' Bats Pod there. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you all for listening. I hope everyone enjoyed the deadline. This is craziness. A crazy deadline. It was a buyer's market, then it was a seller's market, then you got Jack Flaherty for cheap at the end. But just a lot going on, as it always does. And I wanted to come on as quick as possible and do an immediate reaction. I'm sure a lot will come to mind, but we have plenty of time to talk about it, my friends. Appreciate you all. Love you all. Until Saturday with Smoltz, my friends. That does it. Remember, find your bat and flip it. Peace.